Get in the shot. Get in the shot.
At one point it's just going to pop out. That'd be great.
And he's off. He'll come back. Hello, my name is Didi, and I'm a truth seeker, and I've spent my life on the journey of transmuting everything that I've felt from the outer world, meaning that I'm also an empath, and I feel like I've reached a point where I have center. So I guess I stand before you as a centered human, and I'm in the process of unleashing my full potential now. And I'm very passionate about connecting with others and seeing what is going on in a community, identifying the necessities and the gifts. And I like to put myself in a place where I can be helpful and pull in resources and offer any help and information, just by being an example of the process that I've gone through. My understanding of the new paradigm comes from a space within. I think there was a point where we were all expecting something to shift in 2012, and for me, my understanding is that it's an internal shift. It's remembering who we are, and as I mentioned before in my introduction, it's getting to a right understanding and finding center within, and really finding source within, knowing that source is happening at all moments within, and the awakening and the evolution and the shift has to come from within. And as soon as we exemplify that, because we have the understanding that we are the creator and we create our reality, then everything begins to shift. And what's more is that as soon as more of us are awakening in this process, which I... that was my dog, Malaika. As soon as we come into... what was I saying?
More of us come to...
Oh, yeah. So I see that more and more of us are awakening. And I know that there has been talk of the critical mass of 144,000 light workers. And I really believe it's very important to put the information in its right place, because I think that we are expecting for all of us to unite in a physical sense, and I really feel that we already are united. It's important for all of us to be light beams, where in the precise moment and place that we are, and just firmly believe and understand that we are already connected. I do believe that there is a critical mass that has already awakened, and it's a process of conscious recognition, acceptance, and then applying this right understanding. So I think in the new paradigm, manifestation happens a lot faster from a sense of knowing who we are and knowing that we are the creator. But with that comes a lot of responsibility, and that is a process where we apply this information and turn it into experience that in turn will be the wisdom and the information that we bring back to source, because in the end we are source, observing itself and wanting to know what the great mystery of having awakened in the midst of the chaos is. That's the great mystery, I believe. I started this journey in 2002, and I studied sound engineering, which really blew my mind and changed my world completely. I had the fortune of living in London, and I ended up at an art squat. So before that, I was living in Mexico, and I didn't have a clear sense of what the world around me, what was going on in the world, and what was going on behind the curtain. So whenever I ended up in this art squat with a group of anarchists, and they gave me a lot of information right before 9/11 happened. So as soon as 9/11 happened, um, something made it click, and it was like 180 degrees. I became a new and different person, because now I was seeing things that I before hadn't seen, and it was a very, very, very painful process, extremely painful, because it's like we're very few people who actually get the chance to look behind the curtain and see the puppet strings, and it can become a very lonely process. So I took music as my ally, and I started writing songs that had to do with my existential crisis. I was very lucky to be in London as well, because of just so many musical influences and genres, and having the courage to stand before an audience and basically spill my guts out, and be transparent and turn myself inside out, show my pain, show what was happening in my life. It took me a long time to record my first album. It took me 7 years of processing the information. And when I finally did, I realized that I no longer wanted to sing about the topics that I had been chewing on for 7 years. And it was very, very difficult for me to also see my friends, who were my audience, singing the lyrics back to me, and that's where I understood the power of manifestation. So I went into spiritual retreat, not really knowing where to go, who to go to, but that's where the process of my own truth seeking began. And I moved to Tepoztlan, where we are now, 7 years ago, and I just started connecting with all the different spiritual currents and happenings that are going on in this town. And I have to admit that I was really disappointed to see that we tend to place so much responsibility on guides and gurus to heal us, when we are all actually our own guru and our own healer. And that's where the most painful part comes, because you have to take responsibility of whatever you're going through, and also take responsibility of not judging what another human is doing, because we are all doing our best. You know, we are all doing our best, and the great mystery still remains. So now the process of music making, I feel it's still authentic, but it comes from a different place. I spent many, many years researching psychoacoustics and the effect that music and sound frequencies have on our body and our mind and our emotions, and how we can unleash and trigger just the removal of blockages, and how we can reach a state of wellness through the right use of sound, which also has to do with sacred geometry. Everything's connected, and really everything is vibration. So sound is an amazing quality and an amazing tool, an amazing ally. And sometimes lyrics can be a bit limiting when you have such a wide use and availability of sound. So I guess it's been a huge process for me to make music from this understanding, because it's almost like I can't put into words what I would like to express. In the end, all I want to express is the great mystery, but how do you express that in words? So I've been struggling with lyrics at this moment, and have realized that it's just important to go with the flow, and I'm still open for channeling what Source would like to convey, because I don't think it comes from me anymore. yeah, to touch on the point about love in particular, and my experience with it is that very few of us know about self-love. And so when we hear, like now it's become a trend, but and rightfully so, because love is the answer. It's the answer to unleash our potential as a race, as us being part of a whole. But I think that without self-love, it's impossible to love outside, and that's the real catch for me, was to find self-love and self-care, and really wake up every morning and treat myself as I would like to be treated. Not treat others as I treat myself. First treat myself how I would like to be treated, because then it's impossible not to treat others in the way that I care about myself. So, I mean, where does sound come into the whole into question is just how you touched on how conscious musicians are emerging, and I do want to touch on the dark side of why conscious musicians had to emerge. And I really believe in the power of manifestation, and I do know that music has suffered a lot of tweaking, because just by frequency, the normal scale that we're accustomed to making music is actually has the frequencies have lowered, which have made it so that whatever resonance, it's like we're cutting the wings off of the resonance of what actually could be healing vibrations. So bringing that wisdom back and creating music from that point of view, where every frequency has a purpose and it has a healing effect and a transformational and transcendental effect on the human body and on life. And we are coming out of an era of music made to really disempower us, and formulas that have been created to make music sound so catchy that, you know, the music's great, and then we end up singing lyrics that are completely destructive to our health, to our perception of ourselves, and the perception of reality. So I say, you know, all the power and all the love to whoever's awakened and is making a conscious effort to bring back the sacred purpose of music, of sound. And I hope to also be a positive influence in that field. I look forward to it.
Your own take on animals and the importance of them.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, everything in our reality is an expression of source. And I also had to really think about my stance with regards to who I am and how I affect the world around me. And when it comes to animals, I'm a meat eater, and I used to be embarrassed to mention it. And it was really funny because somebody said, in Tepos, everybody is vegetarian in daylight, and as soon as the sun comes down, all the meat eaters come out. Behind closed doors, we're like munching on the bones. No, but really, I think it's to go beyond that and then come back to that point in particular. It's all about being true and being authentic and taking everything one step at a time. And I think that we've come from a path of so much resistance and so much fighting that all of a sudden we want to tackle the world's problems by ourselves, and it can become overwhelming. It can become completely overwhelming. And when we make the switch of not just considering being vegetarian or vegan, but being an ecologist and just there's so many decisions along the way, and then applying ourselves in accordance. And I think that it's important for me to take the path of least resistance, take it all into consideration, and then understand what I can do, what I am willing to do, and what I will not give myself a hard time about not doing, or doing in a way that might go against the current, or might make me a black sheep in this current of vegetarianism and veganism. However, in my immediate reality, I have adopted 3 animals, and we were talking about this before. It was not my conscious decision to bring them into the world. However, they have come to me, and I am their mom. I am their caretaker. I feed them, and what they give back to me is unconditional love. I've learned so much from them, and so I feel at ease and at peace with how I'm living my life. Obviously, there are still some glitches and they show up immediately in my reality. It's almost like I can't take a step in the wrong direction without feeling the pebble in my shoe, or just getting slapped in the face straight away. So I guess I actually do feel at ease. I am fortunate enough to live in a town where we are not bombarded with mass production of food, or we don't have the immediate example of this mass killing in slaughterhouses. There are still families that that are dedicated to the raising of animals for food consumption by humans. So I happen to know a few places where we can actually get food. I'm not entirely sure that any form of killing is ethical, but at least it's not in mass slaughter and production. Very fortunate in this part of our world to be in Tepoztlan, because we get high quality everything. We have a really high quality life, and what has helped me is to really be in touch with nature. I don't know if that's a question for the future, but
so carry on.
Yeah, so then I can join that. I think it's so important to have immersion into a full immersion into nature, and I have been fortunate enough in my life to get it early on, and that really helps to just kind of declutter and detox, and realize how it's not easy to live in nature, and it by no means is accommodating to the human. And that's why I think we have gone the route of paving and cutting and just transforming, because we are aware that nature is actually a hostile environment. Everything is living and dying at every moment. It's a very complex and very challenging task to take on, to actually live in nature. But the reward that comes from it is simplicity, is being able to live simple and be fierce, and want less, have less desires, listen to the ebb and flow, to the changes of season. It also helps you to be more aware of your own the tides in your body, and how specific fruits will be available at different times of the year. And it's all connected. We are all one, and nature plays the biggest role in that, because we are part of that. And so we control nothing. In the end, Whenever we pass away, nature will engulf us. Mother Earth engulfs us back into the core. So being aware of that, of how massive it is and how nurturing it can be when we have the right relationship to it, not by controlling and trying to push more out of her than what she will give, because what she gives is enough. Yes.
It's like the universal law of nature is anything that takes more than it needs will wipe itself out. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
That's a really tough question. And especially because living here in Tepos, there's a lot of alternative education systems and schools. And I also have the opportunity to socialize with a lot of kids. And I see how what good it does them to live in nature. So I would definitely say that an important education is to be immersed in nature. And the role that we play as adults is to contain and to guide. I've also seen kids who, just because we come from such limited systems and limiting systems, then going in the opposite direction completely, like offering complete freedom, I think can also be tricky, especially for kids, because they're so open, they're so connected to source still, that they're still learning not to touch, that if they touch fire it will burn them, that if we can help kids by showing them the tools and showing them how to use them and then letting them have free reign to experiment, I think that's more along the lines, and it's definitely got to do with survival in nature, self-love, definitely the sacred connection to source. I think that the separation of education from spirituality is a big movement. However, I think the essence mustn't be taken away. And it's an essence that unites all religions around the world and humanity in general. And that is that we are source. So teaching kids that from early on, I mean, they already know. They already know that. But just, facilitating an environment where they will not lose that connection, I think is very important. Because if any human being from an early age is encouraged to love themselves and to stand with confidence within themselves, then everything is possible. And I think that's the key.
And any more about practices for people who are getting the nudge from the universe to shift direction and they're still maybe with anxiety or other issues, when they're trying to step outside of what their normal routine has been for however long, things that might be beneficial for them to try, such as meditation or breath work or singing or whatever you might suggest.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a very, very personal process, and I used to think that I knew and that I could actually help people. I think that there's so much information and so many tools now available to us that sometimes it can be tricky, because sometimes we'll just fill our toolbox with so many tools and then to actually apply. So I think that at this point, for someone who's taken their first peek behind the curtain, is to know that you are not alone. That more and more of us have taken a peek behind that curtain, and I think that's that's the number one advice I could give anyone, is to know that you are not alone. And everything else, if from this place of knowing that you are not alone and remembering that you are source, and it's a complete intellectual process to begin with, but after a while it starts to make a click, and that's where intuition and discernment comes in, because all the tools are already there for us, and it's what clicks with you. It's the path of least resistance to begin with, and then discipline and application, and that's the challenge. That's the hard part. But the path of least resistance should definitely be connecting to your intuition and to your heart. If you ask Source to reveal what path is good for you to take, then the answers will come, and the people will show up, and the information will be revealed. So I can't really give any tools to anybody. I'm in the same process myself. I'm navigating the tide and going with the flow.
That was a beautiful answer. I love that.
Okay. I guess for me, a taste of what this all means, and how I've seen it manifest in my reality, is not so much to do with the connections on the outside, but it had to do with the first time that I sat down in front of the mirror, and looked at myself and realized how I had not been with myself for so many years. How I was just running away from myself and looking for friendships and relationships to grab onto, and to spill all of the love that I had in my heart, with the hope that that my company would stay forever. And after a really difficult breakup, I rented the studio that we're in now, and I sat in front of the mirror and I was like, okay, this is it. How can I expect anybody to be in my company if I can't even be in my own company? If I don't even love myself, if right now I'm scared. I'm scared to look at myself, and I'm scared to be with my own company. And that's when all the work started, because I've been doing the work for many, many, many years now, but I had always been running away from myself. And it was not until that moment that I looked at myself in the eyes and I said, okay, this is it. What are the steps that I need to take to love myself, to really actually enjoy myself, to become my favorite person in the world? And so a taste of that is whoever's sitting in front of the camera now, Of course, there's a lot of things that I still, not necessarily want to change, but want to better about myself. But the moment, that inexplicable, and I mean, there's no timing for when it happens, but there was a moment where it just clicked in me, and I really felt that I was not alone anymore, and that I wasn't scared. And that to me is the biggest gift, and is the taste of this new paradigm, that it all comes from within. And I not only believe, but I am certain that I am the creator of my reality, and that's priceless. There's a lot of responsibility that comes from that, and as soon as I got it, everything just started to make sense, and all the beauty just showed up, revealed itself. Yes. So I heard about Iboga when I was 27, years old. I am turning 35, so this was quite a long time ago. And the first time I heard about it was through a friend of mine who said that her father had taken Iboga to kick alcoholism. And I was like, yes, that's what I want. I need that because I live with so much fear and I'm so compressed that something needs to shift. And this is when, like I had mentioned before, you know, like the 180-degree shift in my life. Ever since I took the peek behind the curtain, I had no idea who the hell I was and what was going on. So it was a very, very painful process because that peeking behind the curtain happened when I was 18 years old. So by the time I was 27, I had already been through a lot of suffering. So that when I heard about Iboga and that through the use of it, something completely different could happen. You could be this completely different person, or so I thought. I was like, yes, I have to do that. And then I researched a bit about it, and it turns out it's quite a process, and it's quite something to consider, because well, it has its let's just say we have to be precautious. You know, it's not something that can be done without thinking about it or without properly researching who's going to administer, and also having to do with just where you are health-wise. So it took me a while. Also, I think the cost of going through a process is very, very, very steep. So I never really had the option, or I never had the availability, the fluency, the affluency?
The affluency.
Yeah, the affluency to just decide and go do it. And then many years later, just a few months ago, I met up with a guy that I had met a year before, and he had just told me so many things about the whole process and had offered it. But I was so scared to take it at that moment that I completely postponed it. And then the beauty of it was that as soon as I said no, I regretted it. You know, I regretted it for the whole year, because I was like, I had the opportunity and I said no, and I was scared, and what am I scared about? And so it was a really awesome process, because I really do believe that Iboga has been with me since I'm 27. Like the moment somebody mentioned Iboga, Iboga has been working through me and has been just kind of getting me ready for when we actually met 3 months ago. But more so, just that year that I had the chance to just completely regret having made the decision of not taking it then, really helped me investigate and be very clear with the intentions that I would have if it were presented and if it would come to me again, which I didn't know when it would come again. So that when the moment that it did, I knew what I wanted to, like I knew what I wanted to work on, and my intention was very, very clear. During the process, what's really important, I think it's very, very important to have a good guide and to investigate who you're going to do it with, and also, like we had talked about before, the gut feeling, the intuition, the discernment of like that it feels good, you know, it's that it's calling you, and you are willing to surrender to it, because we can go in with intentions, but there's no control. What I learned in that process is that Iboga will take you through your death, and then into a period of limbo, and then into your rebirth. But of course, when you're going through it, there's no reference point, and it's definitely not a psychedelic experience. So it's no fun. It's no fun at all. It's actually quite such an intense process because it just makes you sit with your darkness and your mind and everything, every shortcut that you've taken to not be with yourself. Iboga will sit with you and look at it and look at basically all the rubbish that you have in your mind. It's not an easy process. I think it's something that everybody in the world could do. I don't think it's like, oh, it's only for certain people and it's only for people with addictions. I think we are all addicted. Anybody who is not with themselves and is constantly running away and looking for answers is addicted, is codependent to something, to Facebook, to food, to entertainment, to porn, to drugs. We have all suffered some form of addiction. So of course Iboga is not going to do the work for you. And that I think was an amazing thing to realize when we were in the process, because we're like, but aren't I supposed to be somebody new today? Like the day when you come down from the experience, you're like, but I still, and now I really have to go into the real, like back into my life, and nothing changed. And actually that's not true. What Iboga shows you is how to be with yourself and how to take responsibility for everything you've done to run away from yourself. And for me, it's been the biggest gift. I'm not going to give Iboga all the credit for it, but I am very, very thankful to have such a master, because it is a master of plants, just like any plant, just like any person, just like any experience. If we surrender, and if we allow Source to speak to us, it can speak to us through anything. And I personally believe that the whole key to all of this is to come back to Source, to realize that we are Source, to sit with ourselves and recognize everything that we have done to create the reality that we're living in, all the glitches that we've created, everything that's painful, everything that's shitty, all of that, and reel it back in, and be responsible and forgive ourselves, because most of the times we did not know. And most of the times we did know, and we did it anyway. But once we come back to center, it's almost like every time we're going to do something that we know we shouldn't do, there's something there that stops us in our tracks, and that's gold.
Remember the mantras?
Yes, yes.
To say there's a lot.
Wonderful mantras, yeah, they're great.
Do you mind saying what they were?
Yeah, for sure.
They're actually good for anyone in any time without just having taken a boga.
But I just remember the one mantra.
Okay.
Was there another one? What was the other one?
It was there was whatever and so what, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. So we were really, really lucky and very fortunate to have our guide. Yeah. I'm not sure. Should we mention his name, or we just leave it?
Oh, I think you can say like his first name. It's not a problem. Yeah, Sean.
Yeah. Well, as I was saying, we were very lucky to have Sean as our guide, because I guess he's just been through the experience so many times that he was able to give us some sort of blueprint to our experience. And it was he gave us 2 mantras that were amazing for that experience, and for the everyday life that we would be thrown back into after. And one of them was whatever, and it had to do with, we're gonna, there's one point where you're just thinking and your head is getting cluttered with so many thoughts, and then our tendency to just like ride the thought out to ad nauseum, ad infinitum. And he was like, no, just every time a thought pops into your head, just go, whatever, and see how that feels. And it really does bring one back into our silence and our presence, because we are not our thoughts. That is what that mantra showed me. And the so what was, whatever comes up, so what? And it's a form of detachment. It's very interesting now that we're talking about detachment, because I think it's difficult to grasp, especially when we have such a zest for life and we're so passionate. And how can we detach? What do you mean, be detached? But it basically has to do with detach yourself from what is not you. And you are not your thoughts. I am not my thoughts. That's the main point, is come back to source, come back to your presence, and create from there. And when we create from there, we can live passionately and fiercely and just really go into whatever we have to go through. And, we're never going to be able to not feel, because I do feel that in this body, the feedback language that we get are emotions. So we will always feel emotions, but processing them intellectually might not be the answer. And that's where I think it's very important, because we do live in a world that has put so much distraction and really caused so much so much distraction in our frontal lobe. It keeps us so occupied that we're completely saturated. So when we have the chance to sit in silence, it's freaking scary as hell. It's scary. So that's when these mantras come in, and we're like, okay, whatever, and so what? Here I am. Love is wellness, is not on the outside. It's, like I was saying before, it comes from within. We're all already in love, and love is caring for yourself mainly, taking good care of yourself. Not taking for granted that we come in this vessel that is so intelligent, that as Joe Dispenza, who's a fantastic neurobiologist, said, if our mind or our brain was given the task of remembering when to breathe, we would die within 5 seconds, because how many times have we actually sat down and thought, oh, I'm breathing in, out? How many times have we actually done that in our lives? And then we spend the rest of our day and our body is breathing and our blood is flowing. So there's an intelligence that comes with this vessel that we call our bodies, and not taking that for granted is caring and being grateful to be alive, gratitude and caring. And that to me is love, and it's expansion, and I mean, once we care, like I was just saying before, I can't stress it enough, once you care about yourself, how can you not care about everything else? It's all your creation.
Thank you. And anything else about music at all?
About music? Well, a song.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Okay, I'll get my guitar.
Let me just get a little shot of the kitty.
Yay! This is Jamiroquai. My love takes me higher, and I will go, and I will go, and I will go, and I will go. I see myself again. Keep it lit, keep on moving, keep going strong. I see myself again. Keep it lit, keep on moving, keep going strong. We'll go, and I will go, and I will go, and I will go.
Thank you so much.
Yay!
Have a hug. Thank you.
Mwah. Thank you. What a fantastic time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually do want to touch upon the part where you asked me what advice and what tools for people who are looking, who are waking up, and I think creativity plays a huge role. And just now that we finished the interview and we had a hug and we just had a mini celebration of life, and I just realized that, you know, I was about to tell you that I was going to say we have it so easy because we're creative, and actually, I mean, it's not easy to be creative and to be an artist, because I think in throughout history it's been so well known that artists, they have a different perspective, and it's not usually the one that's in the box. So creativity does play a huge role, because it accompanies us through this process, and because we are the creator, creating is so important, and creating from this space that I've just been mentioning over and over, the space of the right understanding of who we are. And so I would just advise any and everybody to get creative.
Yeah, with whichever way that suits them, right?
Yeah.
That can be anything.
Yeah.
Anything at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing way, first of all, to transmute whatever emotions we're going through, that not necessarily calling them bad emotions, but whatever is not allowing us to be in a state of wellness through creativity and artistic endeavors, we can transmute. We can transmute that. And that also can be, I don't know, doing exercise, just getting creative. So that would be my main advice. Okay, so when we take the peek behind the curtain, and all of everything starts getting unveiled, and it can be quite the process, and it's quite scary, because all of a sudden you realize that you're living in a huge lie, and it's not only a lie that's outside of you, it's inside of you as well. And just touching upon the part where you are not alone. We will all eventually go through that process, and I think it's really important to share your experience and to allow yourself to be vulnerable, because in the vulnerability comes the strength, and the strength will come in numbers, because when we are vulnerable and we share, that's when we do actually realize that we're not alone, and when we can really be authentic and just reveal our true nature, because we have spent so much of our lives putting masks on and walking in untruth. So we are not alone, and it's okay to be vulnerable and share your experience, because it will benefit you and others. Yes. The thing about Mexico is it's a country that is very rich in resources, and there's still a lot of untouched nature. The system that has been pushed on us, like when we're talking about these squares, is it comes from a sense of a pyramid structure that we have to climb to get on top, and we have to there's limited resources, and step all over each other to get a piece of, like, a bite of the cake. And the thing, when you live in a country with so many resources, there's already a sense of community, because everybody's well fed. And I think that in Mexico we come from that. The planet all over the place was once like that. And the only reason systems came in, well, I'm speaking like I know, but in a way, right? If I'm source, there's some wisdom in here. I think systems have come into place because resources have been depleted. And the system that is running the world now comes from that idea that there is depletion, that there is lack, that we have to fight to survive, that we have to that resources are limited, and that's not true. And how that pertains to Mexico is precisely that. Just it's a fallacy to think that, or to actually, that people believe that they are poor, and that's why they live in poverty. Because actually in Mexico we have rich soil, but if we're following the footsteps of how others did it because they depleted their resources, then it's a different system that comes into place. And when we bring those systems into a country like Mexico, then it makes us want to strive for other types of necessities that are not really the necessities of this body, of the vessel that we're in. Just the simplicity of living gets completely distorted. Mexico is a place where we are really heart-centered, and there is a great sense of community. And it was shown to us. We had a massive earthquake just in September, on the 19th of September. A massive earthquake hit south central Mexico, and it caused a lot of damage in Mexico City. And there's been several earthquakes, a lot of earthquakes actually in Mexico, but one that hit the city as hard as the one in 1985 happened in 2017, and it really got people to wake up and realize that, hey, no matter how much you pave the streets, no matter how many buildings, no matter how comfortable you want to your life to be by pushing nature away, nature's always going to push back. And fortunately in Mexico we still have a lot of people living in nature and working the land. And that's why I think that there's a great sense of community, and our heart hasn't been entirely closed, because the systems that have been in place around the world are relatively new here in Mexico. Capitalism, what is it? Neoliberalism.
Or conservatism.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we edit that out because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
It's all right.
Yeah.
The thing is, the truth is, no one does.
Exactly. What the hell are those systems anyway? If the child in me doesn't understand them, that means they don't work. They don't work. And Mexico's a beautiful place, you know. We are very good at, in the news, we're portrayed as a very conflicted nation, and in many senses we are. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, we are great conflict resolvers. And as it was shown during the earthquake, where a lot more was done by the citizens than by the system. So that's a clear example of how the system does not work in a place like Earth. And the system that has been pushed does not work in humanity. We are not individuals. We are all part of an organism. And this is dangerous. This realization is dangerous to the system, because the more people wake up, and the more people get together and realize that we can actually survive on our own, because we can, because nature will provide. And I guess that's why so much negative news gets pushed out of Mexico, because there's such a gem here, and it has to do with the heart connection. It's very easy to connect to people, to the hearts of people. Very, very easy. Whenever, like a big tip for anybody who wants to come and visit Mexico is just connect. Be vulnerable and be open to connect, because as soon as you connect to anybody, they will open their heart and most likely open the door to their home and feed you. And that is something that I've had the honor and pleasure and fortune to experience in what I'm very fortunate to call my own country. And I can understand how that could be very dangerous to the system, and why it would want to be covered up. So anybody who's interested in coming to Mexico can just see for themselves and just be open to connect heart to heart.
Awesome. It's also, for me, it's like a lot of people who come to Mexico since I've been here and have come to the market, and they're like, oh, I've just arrived and stuff, and they're like, it's really totally not what I thought it was going to be. And then someone said this, which was brilliant. I thought it was like, you know what, this is exactly why the government's put out all of that stuff, isn't it? Because if people actually found out that this place was so magical and like connected with people who are open-hearted and generous and sharing, then of course the system in the countries that they're coming from, like America and England, where everything is so controlled and you have to get a form to put up a statue or something without wearing a hat, health and safety madness and so on, you know, everyone in those places would leave.
Come to Mexico.
Yeah.